Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Baltimore Ravens are so back after demolishing the Bills. Also, college football fans witnessed an all-time classic on Saturday, and the Green Bay Packers came up just short against the Minnesota Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
There are statement games, and then there is what Baltimore did to Buffalo on Sunday night. A 35-10 beatdown in prime time that started with a Derrick Henry splash play, first touch, 87-yard touchdown, a highlight you will no doubt see all season. Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens joins me now. And Kevin, this is a Ravens team that has had a bit of a tough start to open the year, and then all of a sudden they look like the team that we thought they could be coming in, beating the team that many of us thought was the best team in the NFL coming into week 4. What changed for Baltimore in this one?
They started off fast. Obviously, again, you can't really start you can't start faster than a Derrick Henry 87-yard touchdown. But then
I'm not sure Derrick Henry can go much faster.
And look, for a big guy, he can absolutely move, Peter. But the Ravens then took that momentum, and I know it got kind of dicey at the beginning of that second half, and we know the Ravens' MO can sometimes be they play with that big lead or not. But you know what? They come up with that Josh Allen fumble on that trick play. They score a touchdown, and the rest was history. They go up big. They lean on their ground game, and they punish a team in Buffalo that couldn't get out of their own way, had no answers for Baltimore. And while the Ravens made their fair share of mistakes too, they played dominant football in this one. And the key phrase here, Peter, is for 4 quarters. That's how they did it. Not 3, not 3.5. They played dominant football for 4 quarters.
Well, and that's the key here, right? Because we've seen Baltimore play 3, even 3.5 really good quarters of football. But to do it against a team that we know is as dynamic and explosive as any team in football, by virtue of the fact that their quarterback is as dynamic and explosive as any quarterback in football, Josh Allen, probably the MVP favorite through 3 weeks. And they were able to not just handle everything that Josh Allen was able to throw at them, but match it and exceed it. That has to be the story, right? That they closed this deal out, not just that they were impressive. We've seen them be impressive. They closed it out.
And that's a big thing with this team. It's been obviously the first couple of weeks we saw that they either won and they turned a pretty win into an ugly one, and they had all those moments. But you know what? This Buffalo team, you mentioned it, Peter, this isn't a bad football team. You know, the Ravens, and we saw them even do this last year, where they had hot football teams come in and they just slammed them. They dominated them. And in prime time, under the lights, the Ravens are starting to find their identity. And I have to give a shout out, Peter. You mentioned why the Ravens won this game. Got to give it to the offensive line and the blocking we saw throughout the entirety. Huge question mark coming into the season, huge question mark over the first couple of weeks of the season. Well, you couldn't have as better performance as they did in this one. We saw tight ends getting to the second level, like a Mark Andrews, who again does not have a catch in this game, but makes his impact felt in a huge way. Rashad Bateman blocking on the outside for Lamar on his touchdown. It all starts up front for an offense. I don't care which offense you are. And for this Ravens team, it relies so much on getting guys into their proper spots and making sure that, 1, Lamar has time to throw, and 2, you can open up rushing lanes for your skill position players. I mean, we saw against the Buffalo defense that struggles against the run to begin with. They could not match up with Baltimore, and Baltimore made them pay exactly what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, and you look at this game, you know, Derrick Henry is the story on the ground, but then the Baltimore leading receiver in this game by a mile is Justice Hill, another running back. They found a way to use multiple backs in this game and just say, look, we're bigger than you, we're stronger than you, we're more physical than you. This is theoretically, right, the January formula. This is what the Ravens have not been able to do over the last few years, is find those answers. Does this give you any, does this hearten you at all to say, hey, look, this is the kind of game that you have to win in January. Not that you're going to win it 35-10, but that this might be the way you have to win it.
Yeah, and again, this Ravens team is not conventional. I think, we've watched a lot of this team over the years.
No Lamar Jackson team has been conventional because he is an unconventional player in a terrific way.
And it works. We saw when Lamar came into the league, the whole league was zigging one way and the Ravens zagged in the other direction. And it's worked for them. It hasn't necessarily resulted in massive playoff success or a Super Bowl. But when it comes down to it, we know this team can be dominant in the regular season. They have been dominant in the regular season, but you're not going to have, your pure number one receiver going for 100 yards every game, or your leading receiver isn't always going to be a wide receiver. Sometimes it is a running back. Sometimes it is a tight end. This offense just flows through different people. They do different things with their offensive line, like using guys in imbalance. They run a rotation sometimes, and that's just who this team is, Peter. They're unconventional, but it works.
Stay up to date on the Baltimore Ravens all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Ravens on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, one of the NFL's most heated rivalries lives up to the hype. Before we get to that, we take a look at the game of the year in college football. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on your same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And we've got Monday Night Football to deal with. Monday Night Football features a doubleheader again. Detroit Lions, 4.5-point home favorites against the Seattle Seahawks. The Dolphins starting new quarterback Tyler Huntley, 2.5-point favorites against the Titans. So what are you waiting for? That's FanDuel.com to get started. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Alabama Crimson Tide and Georgia Bulldogs played what may be the game of the year on Saturday. The contest had a plethora of explosive plays, of turnovers, and was almost capped off by a monstrous Georgia comeback. But 17-year-old freshman wide receiver Ryan Williams put the dagger in the dog's heart.
I mean, I think the right word for me would be epic. There's 4 different, but it was like an epic movie with 4 parts. I mean, the first part was an epic start for Alabama. I think when Alabama raced out to the 28-0 lead that became 30-7, that was about as good as this Alabama team is going to play. I mean, that was the best team in college football. They were fantastic, and it was just an epic historical start and as good as this team could play. Awesome. Then give Georgia a ton of credit. An epic comeback. They could have so easily packed it in and said it was not our night. We just got to regroup and replan against Alabama. No, down 30-7, Carson Beck went to work. Carson Beck proved, I think, his NFL value last night. I thought he in particular was fantastic in the comeback. And I would just say that comeback was epic. I mean, that was how they got off the mat like that to take the lead, just unreal. Then the last 2 epics, the epic play by Ryan Williams that won the game for Alabama. I mean, it literally won the game for Alabama. And, mentioning that he's 17 is now beyond. It was fun and it was funny, and then it got over said. And now it's just forget how old he is. It doesn't matter. I mean, the kid could win the Biletnikoff at 17 as the best wide receiver in college football. I think that's reasonable. And Jim Nagy, how about this tweet last night from the Senior Bowls? Jim Nagy, if Ryan is 3 and done and goes to the NFL and plays in the Senior Bowl, he would do so as a 19-year-old because the Senior Bowl is played in January and his birthday's in February. Played in the Senior Bowl at 19.
They'd be like, you got high school Senior Bowl? No.
Yeah, so that was the third epic. It was an epic all-time play. That we will see the replay of that Ryan Williams touchdown 200 more times just this year alone. and that's probably not 200 enough times.
Jaden Daniels continues to make his case for Rookie of the Year with a stellar performance against the Arizona Cardinals.
Because Jaden Daniels not only doing some good things on the ground, but also doing some good things through the air. Four incompletions tonight. So doubling his incompletions from a week ago. Ben Standing kind of jokingly asking Dan Quinn about, what do you do when your quarterback doubles his incompletions? Obviously, not too big of a deal. 233 yards, a touchdown. Does throw his first interception of his NFL career. In real time, we were sitting in the press box watching that play. I felt like the ball was high behind Terry McLaurin. But give a lot of credit to Arizona Cardinals cornerback Garrett Williams, I believe is his name. Sorry if I messed that up, Cardinals fans. But Garrett Williams, I believe, is the DB who comes up with the interception. Had him make an incredibly athletic, coordinated, kind of batted the ball, then caught it on the way down to the ground, secured the catch to come up with the interception. And look, if those are the kinds of interceptions that Jaden Daniels is going to throw, where they're competitive, they're deep downfield. I think he gave the Cardinals the ball here in their own end. I want to say the 19-yard line. Don't quote me on that, but it certainly was in this end of the field. So it's not like it put them in scoring position automatically. And the DB had to make a pretty impressive catch in order to come up with it in the first place. So those are going to be the types of interceptions Jaden Daniels is going to throw in his NFL career. I think we're going to be all right with that. Jaden asked about it after the game. So that maybe he was just being a little greedy, right? Just kind of going up there for it. Terry McLaurin was certainly in double coverage. Budda Baker was also on the right side of him over top. And so even if he leads them, he's probably at least going to get Terry leveled pretty hard by a hit by Budda Baker. So good to see at least guys come away clean from it. The defense gets a 3-and-out. Commanders get the ball right back. Complimentary football happening with the Washington Commanders here on the surface of State Farm Stadium.
And the Braves lost what would have been a playoff clinching game against the Royals.
Well, like I said, Sunday's game, the Atlanta Braves had a chance to clinch and a really good chance to do so against the Royals team that, for all intents and purposes, wasn't playing for much. I know there was some seeding on the line on the AL wildcard part of things, whether they were going to get the 5th or 6th seed. They did play their starters the entire game, and Alec Marsh is a starter in their rotation. And I did think they threw some of their better bullpen arms. Either way, the Braves had a chance to win. They certainly were playing for something in this one, and the Royals weren't necessarily, but they came out swinging in this game and got to Charlie Morton, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But I want to start out by just talking about the weekend. Look, we came into this weekend talking about possible scenarios where the Braves could clinch, but all that seems somewhat unlikely because you were either knew you would have to sweep or you would have to hope that the Diamondbacks get swept. And sweeps are hard, even if you're playing teams who aren't playing for much, which was the case for the Padres that weren't playing for much, and the case for the Brewers who weren't playing for much. Sweeping a team is just difficult. And that's basically what it was going to take, either the Diamondbacks getting swept or the Braves sweeping the Royals. And the Braves took 2 out of 3, and they got a lot of help from the Padres, from the Brewers, who took 2 out of 3 against the Diamondbacks and the Mets, respectively. So again, I know the Braves had a great opportunity to clinch it on Sunday and certainly wish that they would have, but they got a lot of help this weekend to put them in a good chance because of everything going perfectly on Friday and Saturday, where the Braves won and both the Diamondbacks and the Mets lost. You put yourself in a situation where you got 3 games to win 1. Now, they lost the first one of those, but you still got 2 more opportunities to clinch this thing.
On a day when kickers were the story in some bad ways for a couple teams, the Atlanta Falcons got a 58-yarder from Younghoe Koo in a 26-24 win. The game winner from almost 60. Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons joins me now. And Aaron, this is a Falcons team that I think has yet to really give us a clear picture of what it was. Did we get any closer to seeing that picture today, do you think?
Probably not, but they showed that, even when the offense, which I think most people went into the season expecting to be the strength of the Falcons roster, even when the offense is, having a rough day, 0 touchdowns in this game, that the defense and the special teams for the Falcons can be just resilient enough. You get a pick 6 from linebacker Troy Anderson. You get Younghoe Koo making 4 field goals, including that 58-yarder to win the game. You also get a touchdown on a muff punt from special teams gunner Kadero Hodge in this game. So the defense and special teams really gave the Falcons a boost. And so it was a game where the Falcons won in 2 phases of the game, defense and special teams, and 2 is more than enough out of the 3 to get a W against the hated New Orleans Saints.
Mm-hmm. So there's 2 pieces here that I think are at odds, right? They win, and you can't take that away. Like, they get the win, that counts. But then if you think, okay, is this sustainable to get 2 touchdowns the way that they did in this game to win a game, to score 26 points without an offensive touchdown? It's like pretty ridiculous. So what is the bigger takeaway, that they found a way to win anyway? Or, hey, maybe this win is a little fool's goldy?
Yeah, it's probably a little fool's goldy. Like, you're right. It's not sustainable. If you play this game probably 100 times, the Falcons probably lose it like 98 times or something like that.
It still counts, though. We have to say that. Like, before Falcons fans get mad, it counts.
Yeah,
they won.
It absolutely counts. You're absolutely right. So, like, both things can be true, where it still counts. It's a win is a win. However you got to get it in this league, as Peter, as you know, and everybody who's watching and listening to us knows, it is hard to win games in the National Football League. So you take those wins when you get them, no matter how ugly they are. And in a lot of ways, this game was an ugly win, but I think it does give you can use the flip side and being like, hey, this is not sustainable. At the same time, it's like, hey, there's still a lot of room to grow for this Falcon team in all areas. And we haven't seen the best version of the team. And hopefully we'll start to see a better version of this team moving forward. And so that we won't be having conversations about ugly wins and a win in this win. And it's like, hey, this team is impressive. They're winning games in the right way.
Yeah, the glass half full picture is they found a way to win without their offense being the reason for it. When we came into the season going, if they win games, it's going to be the offense that is the reason for it. Why do you think the offense hasn't quite clicked here so far through 4 weeks?
Well, I think a lot of it is, Kirk Cousins typically doesn't get off to the fastest starts in his season. He's in a new offense with a new team in a new city, coming off an Achilles injury. That's a contributing factor. The run game, which is kind of the strength of the offense, is a little up and down. They were dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. They were able to run the ball effectively today when they chose to run the football. The problem was they kind of abandoned the run pretty early in this game and relied on the passing game, which was not reliable. And
Arthur Smith would never.
Yeah, the problem with their passing game is that, like, you're not getting enough contributions from the 2 guys that you thought would be the biggest breadwinners in his office, in Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Pitts especially had a tough day against the Saints today. So, like, once they can get those guys going, in addition to the run game, with Kirk being a little bit more comfortable, with the offensive line playing a little bit more consistent, again, it's a lot of boxes that they have to check. But if they can start checking some of those boxes, I think this offense is going to start living up to the expectations we had going into the season.
Aaron, who's the best team in the NFC South?
I think the Bucs deserve the praise, right? They've won the division. They've looked probably collectively the best over the first 4 games. So they're probably right now, I would defer to the Bucs. But I think the Falcons, coming up on a short week, Thursday night, can snatch the crown from them in a couple of days. So I think the Falcons are inching towards that, but the Bucs right now deserve, the benefit of the doubt.
Who is most likely in your mind to be the best team by the end of the year, whether or not they win the division or not? Who's going to be the best team in this division at the end of the year, do you think?
Well, I'm a little biased, but I hope it's the Falcons. I think they are on the path to get there, but it's just starting a little slower than I would ideally like. But I think they're on that path, but we'll see.
Stay up to date on the Atlanta Falcons all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Falcons on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Jordan Love and the Packers came up just short in Love's return from injury. Despite not being fully healthy, Jordan Love returned for the Green Bay Packers and threw 4 touchdown passes versus the Vikings. He also threw 3 interceptions in a 31-29 loss. I discussed my frustrations regarding Green Bay's early season start on my latest episode of Locked On Packers. The Green Bay Packers were absolutely getting worked. It's 28-7 at halftime. The Packers come out in the fourth quarter. They score 22 unanswered points. They let the Vikings get that critical field goal to make this a 2-possession game late, and the Packers get the late touchdown. They don't have an opportunity. They don't have the time to get the late field goal that would have won them this game. They had the opportunity to get those field goals early in the game. Braden Arvison missed a 37-yarder. And then, down 21-0, Matt LaFleur gave Braden Arvison the opportunity, a 49-yard field goal. You'd expect an NFL kicker to make those between 75 and 80% of the time. And he just biffs that one too. It was, you're down 3 scores. You're kicking the field goal to go down 3 scores. The reason you're kicking it is to say, hey, Braden Arvison, we believe in you. We are going to give you an opportunity to show, hey, we want you to do this. We are here for you. And he, once again, misses the kick. Now, there is a cascade effect of all these different things. It's not as simple as just saying the Packers lost by 2 in a game where they left 6 points on the board. It's not quite that simple. But over the course of this game, the Packers put up 465 yards of offense. Yes, a decent amount of that was in the second half when the Vikings have a big lead, but the Packers consistently closed down that lead, and the Vikings started to change the way that they were playing. It didn't matter. The Packers made them pay in the second half over and over and over. Jordan Love started a little rusty in this game. We'll talk about Jordan Love a little bit later. Not great opportunities with some of the throws. The third down miss to Dontavian Wicks, one of them. Fourth down throw, one of them. But the Packers had plenty of chances in this game. Even the fourth down throw to Dontavian Wicks in the end zone, Wicks comes back to the ball and just biffs the catch. It hits him in the chest. It hits him in the square in the chest. This is another loss where I'm coming on the microphone and telling you that the Packers put up a bunch of yards and a bunch of points on a defense. By the way, this is a legitimately very good defense. Well, the Eagles, another question. This was the best defense in the league by DVOA. And in the second half, they got whatever they wanted. Even in the first half, they moved the ball with effectiveness. But it's drops, it's penalties. And the drops were killers. Dontavian Wicks, I know the final line is going to say he had a really nice game. And he did make some big plays in this game, no doubt about it. 2 touchdowns, including the late one, but 5 catches on 13 targets. And I would say at least 3, if you wanted to go to 5 drops, I think you could get there without stretching too much. It was just brutal. And finally, a combined $4 million donated from Carolina and Tampa Bay owners David Tepper and the Glazer family to Hurricane Helene relief funds. The donations will support immediate and long-term humanitarian aid efforts in North Carolina and South Carolina following the wake of devastation from a Category 4 storm. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports today, who will be the biggest playoff hole after week 4 in the NFL? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.